Welcome to the second episode of A Closer Look: Safeguarding the Vulnerable. There is a lot of stigma and misconception surrounding the words human trafficking. I recently sat down with Detective Rory O'Neill with the Chesapeake Police Department to better understand the realities of trafficking, the challenges faced by survivors, and the ongoing efforts to combat crime and support those affected. Thank you so much for joining me today, Detective. Appreciate it. So, what type of human trafficking cases do you typically encounter?
So here in Chesapeake, I'd say the two types of human trafficking we see is going to be sex trafficking of adults or minors, and then labor trafficking, same, of adults or minors.
What are some of the stigmas or misconceptions about human trafficking?
There's definitely a lot because human trafficking is something that is foreign to a lot of people. And I think the biggest misconception is smuggling is human trafficking, right? Or that everyone is being smuggled over from another country, or we're being smuggled to another country to perform those sex or labor acts. Although that does happen, and I'm not saying that it's not something that does occur, it's definitely something that is kind of boosted up in the movies as far as something that happens a lot more. There is a domestic trafficking that happens here in the United States with United States citizens all the time, and I would say that's a majority of our cases. HSI, they deal with foreign citizens a lot more because of their unit, and we can get involved in that as well. But here in Chesapeake, we do get a lot of domestic related trafficking situations, whether it's, kids being forced to work when they're not supposed to be working, or sex trafficking of juveniles or adults. And the white van theory you kind of brought up is definitely something, again, that has been shown in the movies, that white vans or sprinter vans down the street kind of waiting to abduct you and put you into these situations. Although, again, that's not out of the possibility, but it is definitely more likely, I would say, from the reports that I've handled, that you actually know your trafficker. They could be a boyfriend, they could be a husband, they could be somebody you know or are associated with in your life that lives here, grew up here in Chesapeake or whatever area you're from, and they can traffic you just as easily as somebody who picks you up in a van could. Sex trafficking usually is going to involve prostitution in some sort of way based on the code, and I think it is a big misconception that a lot of people who do perform the acts of prostitution are there willingly and actually want to do it willingly to make money. Unfortunately, some of these people are trapped in that situation, whether they're juvenile or adults, and they're kind of forced against their will to perform these acts for other people to benefit from it. And that's the sad part about it. If you really talk to these people, they don't want to be in the situation that they're in.
And it doesn't have to involve exchange of money.
No, it's just for any sort of benefit. If you benefit in any sort of way per the state code, even if you encourage or entice or recruit somebody into that world, especially if they're under the age of 18, you could be charged with human trafficking, sex trafficking in Chesapeake or in Virginia.
How do you identify and track human trafficking operations?
It's definitely not the most well-known crime. So these victims, unfortunately, are not going to just be flooding the doors of your precincts, coming there trying to report these crimes. So we do rely a lot on the public and tip lines to get us those leads to get to our victims. So that we get a lot of, through the task force, tips from the national tip line, the state tip line. HSI has their own tip line. Situations that we'll follow up and to check on people in need that might be participating in prostitution. And once we finally get them stable and talk to them, they could kind of lead us down the road of, okay, we have a victim here, and we can start working the case, search warrants, subpoenas, surveillance if needed, in whatever jurisdiction we need to do through the task force to get that kind of accomplished. So that's one of the ways I could say we get involved in these cases.
I would imagine if someone is a victim, it's not something they necessarily want to become public, or they might be a little unsure what to do to get out of that situation.
Right. I mean, court, unfortunately, in the criminal justice system is very public, right? Everything's public knowledge at some point. So you are really putting yourself out there, and it is something that a lot of people will just put in their past and move on. Or they might not even know they were trafficked and they just keep moving on their life and kind of chalked it up as a bad experience or something that they don't have to hopefully ever do again. It is a very scary thing to do. That's why we try to embolden our victims and make sure we support them any way we can through the police department, through services, and try to make sure that they're stable, in a stable environment to move forward.
How do you collaborate with the other agencies?
So I'm part of the Hampton Roads Task Force here, and it's through HSI, so Homeland Security Investigations. So we at Chesapeake, I'm the TFO, Task Force Officer here in Chesapeake that works through human trafficking, and I'm kind of dubbed a federal agent for that specific crime to assist HSI, Homeland Security here, and anywhere in Hampton Roads in the United States. I could technically go and investigate that if needed. So we work with other TFOs and other agencies, Virginia Beach, Norfolk, Newport News. Anywhere in Hampton Roads is going to have a task force officer or a couple, and then with HSI as well. So we definitely have a big net, and we all kind of work together when needed for the same goal, which is to try to put a little dent in human trafficking in Hampton Roads, and so they're not part of that situation anymore.
What can the public do to help combat human trafficking in our city?
Cliche as it sounds, is see something, say something. That there's a lot of tip lines, the national tip line, human trafficking, state tip lines, HSI has their own tip line for investigations, Child Protective Services, Adult Protective Services for maybe labor trafficking. There's a lot of agencies besides just the police department, your local police department, that you can call to kind of say something when you see something a little bit wonky that you might think is somebody being prostituted against their will, or a runaway that doesn't seem to be with their parents, that are around these individuals that look like they're taking advantage of them. Or maybe a child that shouldn't be working that particular job, right? You see a child out there operating heavy equipment and you're like, that doesn't look right. Say something, and the worst we can do is look into it. And if we don't find anything, it's nothing. But if sometimes those are the most important parts of the investigation, because that's what starts it. That's what launches your investigation into these matters. And it could end with somebody actually getting out of a bad situation just because you did the right thing and voiced your opinion.
What would you say to someone who's being victimized? How to find that courage to say something, to get them out of that situation if they're in it?
I would say that I know it's difficult for them to trust law enforcement, to trust the process, but we are here to help you. And we do have resources for you that can get you out of the situation you're in. You don't have to live like that. You don't have to be treated in that manner. And it's as easy as just reaching out sometimes to anybody, even if you're at a hotel and it's the clerk and you just tell them, hey, just call law enforcement, just call the tip line and give a tip saying that I'm here and I'm being trafficked against my will. Just speak out. I do hope that somebody hears that and that it gets somebody out of a really bad situation, because nobody should be treated like that or have to deal with those particular, that environment.
Thank you so much, Detective O'Neill, for joining me today to talk about this very serious and important topic. I appreciate it.
Of course, of course.
Thank you for joining me on this second episode of the special series on safeguarding the vulnerable. As we have seen, law enforcement plays a critical role in not just enforcement, but in prevention of human trafficking, victim support, and community education.